The senator from New Jersey.
I have 15 requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of the Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, and the Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell.
Duly noted.
Mr. President.
The senator from New Jersey.
Less than a mile from where we are right now, just a 15-minute walk away, are two curving blue-gray limestone walls about 304 feet long. They curve their way through the center of Judiciary Square under the shadow of neatly organized trees adjacent to the National Law Enforcement Museum. Built and dedicated in 1991, these walls were inscribed with nearly 12,000 names at the time they were built. Each year since then, more names have been added. In fact, just this weekend, families, loved ones, Americans of all backgrounds, Americans of all belief, a tapestry of our humanity gathered under the night sky for a candlelight vigil. And very solemnly, additional names were read aloud and inscribed into that limestone, adding yet once again to the total. These are hallowed names, engraved into those walls, etched forever into our nation's memory. These are names that belong to our fallen heroes. The names are of brave, loyal, patriotic law enforcement officers, our great citizens who answered the call, who sacrificed for their communities. No greater love hath a man than this, than to give his life for his friends, for his nation. These are men and women who every day knew when they suited up, they could face danger, potentially even the ultimate call. They are the names of police officers who had tragedy visit upon them and their families and their loved lives. They're also police officers who took their own lives, and names of officers who fell to COVID. Officers who, in the midst of the pandemic, when we were sheltering in place, they were out doing their duty. Each one of these names are sons. Each one of these people are daughters. They are husbands and wives, brothers and sisters, friends and colleagues. They are parents who have perished. In short, they are the names of public service men and women, public servants who made the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty. It pains me to say that I am familiar with some of these names listed on the walls, familiar from my time as mayor when I oversaw a city including a mighty police department. I remember vividly those times when I would receive that call. One of our officers had been injured in the line of duty or had been shot, or in two cases where they were tragically killed. I remember those phone calls. I remember the visits with loved ones, with their fellow officers, with friends. I remember the pain and the hurt and the agony. I remember the eulogies and the funerals. Grief that lingers still. Families and communities shattered then and still feeling the loss now. It first happened in March of 2007, just months after I had become mayor. Sergeant Tommaso Papalizio was the youngest of 7 siblings. He was an avid paintball player and a loyal son of Newark. His family had immigrated from Italy back in the 60s and settled in the city where Sergeant Papalizio attended high school. Police work, you could say, was in his DNA. 2 of his older brothers were Newark officers, and Sergeant Papalizio was following in his family footsteps. He had been a Newark police officer for 12 years when he responded to a call on a late night of dangerous drag racing going on. Sergeant Popalizio pursued a subject in a high-speed chase during which his SOV crashed into a pole, rolled several times, and he succumbed to head injuries 2 hours later. I remember vividly that day speaking to news media at the hospital. I remember speaking to his heroism. I remember speaking to his dedication, his commitment. And those words are as true today as they were then. And those words of heroism ring true also for Detective Michael Morgan, a 6-year veteran of the Newark Police Force who was tragically taken from us November of 2011. It was said that Detective Morgan was destined to be a cop. When he was a young boy, he would sit by his window and make siren noises, and when police cars went past his New Jersey homes. 2 of his cousins were police officers. His uncle was a police officer, retired deputy chief, no less. He was an athlete, played linebacker and fullback for New Jersey City University. And during his years on the force, he helped take hundreds of guns off the street, protecting people from gun violence. And he was more than just a Newark police officer. He was a community leader from Newark, serving Newark, involved in the community, loving his city in every way. And on that November day, Detective Morgan was off duty when he attempted to stop an armed robbery suspect. Just as he was about to pull his weapon, he was shot in the torso. Other officers there tried to save his life, rushed him to a nearby hospital, but he was pronounced dead. Today, these stories cut even deeper. They weigh even heavier. New Jersey has lost too many police officers. New Jersey grieves recently the loss of Deptford police officer Robert Bobby Scheisler. He tragically passed away just this Sunday from a gunshot wound that he suffered 2 months ago following a pedestrian stop. A 4-year veteran of the force, and the first Deptford police officer killed in the line of duty. He was just 27 years old. Mr. President, these stories, these officers, Sergeant Popalizio, Detective Morgan, Officer Scheisler, they are just 3 individuals amidst the hundreds and hundreds of stories of fallen officers whose names are on that wall and forever emblazoned on the heart and the soul and the character of our country. These stories show duty, they show honor. They're stories of service, of selfless purpose, and the ultimate sacrifice. Stories that remind us of the dangers that every single day law enforcement officers face. And most importantly, they demonstrate what it takes in this democracy, the greatest nation on the planet, still the call of duty, the challenge of what it takes to preserve peace. Without officers that put themselves in harm's way, I struggle to think of how the challenges we face would be all the deeper. Mr. President, this week, as we commemorate National Police Week, the purpose of these days is for us to pay tribute. Police Week is about paying tribute to the law enforcement officers who made the ultimate sacrifice to our country. Let's not forget that. It is a chance for all of us to pause and reflect on how we can continue to work together to ensure that police officers have the support that they deserve in doing some of the most difficult jobs in America. Every day, law enforcement officers are on the front lines of major crimes. They're there in our crises. They're there when we're afraid. They're there when we're under assault. They're there in our communities and our neighborhoods with a noble purpose to serve, to keep us safe, to make us strong. They respond to mass shootings, to domestic violence, to horrible accidents, and to painful crimes. They have to confront the scourge of the rising rates of gun violence in our country, walking into a situation where they face individuals sometimes with weapons that belong not in our streets or our neighborhoods, but in theaters of war. I have seen situations, active shooter situations, where other people are running out, they're running in. Other people are ducking for cover, they stand strong to protect us. In the past few years, during the pandemic, I began to hear the stories of officers with little regard for their own safety still going out and doing their job. When fear and the unknown of this pandemic was hitting, you still had officers showing up for duty, going into dangerous situations. And I began to worry about their well-being. And it's why, working with Senator Grassley, I was proud in the depth of the pandemic to introduce legislation with other colleagues from both sides of the aisle to expand the PSOB program so that death benefits are given to survivors of police officers and first responders who lose their lives to COVID-19. That the presumption is if an officer dies, that it was a line of duty death. And today, I introduced bipartisan legislation to ensure officers across the federal government receive their full retirement benefits. They're there for us for their whole career. We can make sure that we are there for them when they retire. Yet all these bills are introduced and debated in this body. I know that it is a shadow of the work being done by the law enforcement officers in this nation. But many of us on this body were reminded of their heroism when this chamber was attacked on January 6th. And we saw officer after officer put their lives on the line. Indeed, as a result of that attack, we lost Capitol Police officers, including Brian Sicknick from the state of New Jersey. We stand here and we debate. We stand here and we legislate, but out on the walls, just yards from where I stand, are the officers who showed that every single day they face a danger that we will never know. So this week, a week in which we remember our police officers, law enforcement themselves are still out there serving our community. Law enforcement officers are still, with little regard to their safety, running into situations of great danger. Whether it is a rookie cop on their first day or a seasoned veteran who has been on the job for decades, police officers put on their uniform, head outside, and their families and their children and their loved ones know the challenges and the dangers of the job. Most of them will come home. Most of them will raise their kids. Most of them will see retirement, but tragically, some of them will not. And so this week, we call it Police Week, but it is a bit of a divergence from the understanding of why this week came to be. Mr. President, this week is here to remember the sacrifice and the service and the patriotism. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. Of thee I sing. Land where fathers and mothers, sisters and brothers died who wear the uniform. Land of patriotism and pride. Let us not forget those who have fallen, and let us continue in a bipartisan way to protect them, to serve them who so nobly serve us, protect us, and advance this nation forward each and every day. Mr. President, thank you.